Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you join us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are, for our webinar series. I'm Nancy Narden, as you can see, with Smart Selling Tools, and I'm thrilled to have Matt Bonatti of LeadGnome with us, as well as Emily Dick of Quick Mobile. And what we're going to do today is talk about, and this is kind of the format we have for all of our webinars. I'm just going to, let's see there. What we do is we have a conversation with a practitioner, a marketing practitioner or sales practitioner about their use of technology, why they decided they needed to do something, and then we get a demo from a solution provider, in this case LeadGnome, and it's just a great way for all of you to hear from your colleagues about their challenges and how they went about solving it. So let me just first say welcome, Matt, and welcome to you as well, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so we're going to start off with a conversation, Emily and I, and then Matt's going to join in. I mean, you're going to stay with us. Feel free to pipe in anytime, but I'll ask Matt to give a demo after our conversation with Emily. And for those of you that might have a question that pops up, just go ahead and ask that on the side panel. And if we can, we'll answer it in the flow of our conversation. Otherwise, when we're done, right before we sign off. Okay, so Emily, let's start with you, as I said, and tell us a little bit, first of all, a Quick Mobile and your organization, so we get a little context.
Sure. So Quick Mobile is an event app provider in the industry, and our focus is on creating beautiful experiences for the attendees. So we work with event planners around the world, particularly large enterprise companies, and we make a beautiful app and event experience.
Great. Okay. So you've got this great app, and you're selling to enterprises, and you're marketing the solution, and you're wanting to also help support, sales to make sure that they have what they need. What was the challenge that you were experiencing? What did you wake up one day and say, you know what, we can't handle this anymore? I mean, was that the way it unfolded?
Well, sort of. I've always been a stickler for data. So this probably goes back, I don't know, 5-10 years even, where in one of my very first jobs, we would get the out-of-office replies, and I would sit there and go through and check off in our, I don't even think we were using Salesforce back then, it was so long ago. And, whenever I got a new employee, I would send them the out-of-office replies from that week's email, and that was how they learned the database, because it was such a manual process. And when I learned about LeadGnome last year from another Marketo champion, I was like, this is brilliant. Why haven't I been doing this all along? We're missing such a huge opportunity. And so with Quick Mobile, the reason that I went after getting LeadGnome is that we're a really small marketing team. And anything that we can do that we can automate with technology, I am looking at. And that was where I made the decision to go after LeadGnome.
Okay. So I want to just put a little bit of context about this whole out-of-office concept, because this is part of what LeadGnome does. I'm going to let you tell that story, Matt. Actually, why don't I just let you just give like a couple of sentences, because I think people will go, okay, I see now what we're talking about. Because what is it LeadGnome does?
Right. The context is that as marketers, as salespeople nowadays, right, after predictable revenue and that whole model, and organizations popping up for inside sales teams to send out emails on their own, we receive a bunch of responses, whether those are auto responses or whether they're human responses. And traditionally, I mean, Emily's kind of on the cutting edge. Traditionally, most organizations didn't even look at it. They knew that there's data there, but it's really difficult to go in and get the information, right? And if you do have somebody to go in, it's generally their last thing on their to-do list, and then it's not timely, right? So if somebody is out of the office, but you don't know until they're already back in the office, then what was the value, right? So we find a ton of great information in the replies, including all kinds of enriching data for your existing leads, net new contacts, alternative contacts, sales trigger events. We'll get into these, but suffice it to say that it's very difficult to go in and harvest this information with human resources. It's tedious, it's error prone. People don't actually like to do it. It's just really painful. And I was having that same problem. So we created LeadGnome to automate that process. And we literally take all that great information and we move it right into your marketing automation or CRM system so that you can put it to use in the systems that you use every day.
Okay, so the name of our webinar, the title of it is Stop Database Decay. And there's a number of ways to do that. But what you discovered and what Emily was looking for is that the fact that a lot of decay we can know about, we can learn about easily if we just have a way to check out the auto replies that come back from emails. And so there's all kinds of great content in there, including, you know, when somebody might leave the company, so you can get prompted for that real easily. You can get prompted for other colleagues that they're referring you to when they're out of the office. You can get prompted and update databases with their current phone number and things that are found in the email signature line. So Emily, you were one of the smart ones that said, hey, here's a kind of a gold mine that we should be taking advantage of, but it's too hard to do it manually. How did you go about evaluating solutions that could help you with that?
Well, I had heard about LeadGnome, like I mentioned, from a fellow Marketo champion, and usually I go by a lot of word of mouth and referrals to find my technology providers. So I will say that was the route that I took, but I actually evaluated LeadGnome a full year before I purchased it at my previous company. So I knew when I had the chance to purchase it, that was what I was going for.
Okay, excellent. So you evaluated it. Does that mean that you evaluated the solution for an entire year, or you were using it and that gave you a chance to get familiar with it?
No, I just researched it and did a free trial, and so that we could see how it worked. Like I said, at my previous company, and then when I had the chance to purchase, I took the opportunity.
And Emily's a data person, right? So one of the things that we really love about the trial, we do a full 30-day trial because we want our customers to see the information over a typical sort of cycle of campaigns, right? 30 days seems to be the right amount that people have run through their cadences or their typical campaigns. And it gives them really great insight into what LeadGnome is going to provide to them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, so let's talk about some of the objectives that you had. I mean, we heard a little bit about your objectives, but specifically the database decay. And I know that was a big objective for you. What did you have any other objectives?
Well, the database decay is the biggest one for me. Creating new leads from the out-of-office supplies, like the referrals, and adding those into very specific and segmented campaigns was another objective. I actually, in tandem with looking at LeadGnome, made sure I had a great automated appending tool to add other data, and now I can segment really easily. So that's, again, part of our technology stack, an area I don't want people manually spending time on. But it automates itself. I don't have to worry about that. So each week I'm getting like hundreds, if not thousands, of new names that we're adding and putting into different campaigns. So that's really great. That was just almost you know, a cherry on top of the cake or sundae, if you will. The piece that was most important to me is the database decay, getting the people out of my campaigns that shouldn't be there, and also creating more time, more valuable time for our business development reps to follow up with our leads. They're not wasting time on leads that are no longer there. So they're only focusing on leads at companies that to go after, which is, I don't have a dollar number, unfortunately, but the hours that they save because they see that information right away, we segment or cycle it out of their views. I can't even imagine, we don't get complaints anymore about them going after the wrong leads.
Well, that right there is almost probably worth the money, is to not have that friction and conflict with sales, because that's, that's just an age-old problem. And I like the fact that, like you said, salespeople aren't going to be on people who are no longer there, or they're not the right buyers, that sort of thing. When we talk about database decay, I was thinking about this the other day leading up to the webinar, and I'm thinking, you hear about it a lot, but it's hard to really get the emotion of it. Like, why is it really significant? Why do we really need to spend a lot of time on it? And I was looking at my own Salesforce instance and noticing that I had people in there at companies that were no longer there. And having just hired a new sales rep, it's like, that's not good. We got to have a way to make sure. And so that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about keeping things up to date without having to keep them up to date ourselves, right? So it sort of has eliminated that whole manual process. Let's go right on to, I want to talk about implementation, because you talked about evaluating the solution and looking into it for a long time, but what was involved in implementing it, and how would you classify it? Was it a lot of time to figure it out? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Now, I will preface this with I'm pretty tech savvy and I've implemented a lot of different technology tools. However, I tasked one of my program specialists to really, I was there, but I mostly tasked her with setting it up. Automated with Marketo, so that took maybe a couple hours to set up, but it was ready to go for our our next email like the following week. And we started seeing value right away, in the sense that automatically leads were being created, automatically they were being tagged as no longer with company, and then we're just putting them in the different programs or getting rid of them. So that was very, very quick. And we it takes a little bit longer to nurture leads that are cold. So it takes a little bit longer for those new leads to bubble up into MQL, but we're starting to see that now, and that's really exciting.
That's pretty cool. It must have seemed a little bit like magic to all of a sudden see these things that says, hey, this person left the company. Like, wow, you didn't even have to do anything, and now you're getting that valuable information.
Yeah, and we even have it set up that for very specific contacts, they get an alert sent right to the sales rep. And one time it went out, and our VP sales was like, "Are you serious? This person's no longer there." And he called me and asked me what's going on, and I said, "Yeah, this is real." And he was on that account, it's a big key account, and they were able to find the new replacement that day. So that's again, I don't have a dollar figure to tell you, but a big key account. And we're on it before we even knew the person left, really.
That's amazing. And imagine the competitor who doesn't learn about it until much later.
Yep, that's a big one too.
So let's see. So we lost a little bit of time with the audio issues and everything. So I think I'm going to just jump, Emily, to ask you about, do you have any advice for others who might be thinking about, how can they keep their database from decaying? And, would you, if you had this to do again, would you do it all over again? What's your advice?
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile solution. Again, I'm big on data, and at my last company, when we didn't purchase LeadGnome, I had one of our marketing interns doing this manually. So it is a valuable thing, and I think most organizations recognize that there is something to be had about mining some data and putting the right leads into the system. I mean, it wasn't even that I was pushing for the manual part. It was our BDRs at my last company that were pushing for it. So people know that there's value there, and automation is where it's at.
Okay, great. Well, it's go ahead.
That's one of the things that I hear all the time from the organizations that use us, is that the marketing and the BDR, the marketing and the SDR inside sales teams love working together this way now, right? Because marketing is providing them with cleaner data, and more insightful data, right? Like those left to companies, or even mergers and acquisitions can be found. We'll talk about that during the demo, I guess. But you know, we're starting to see a better alignment, some give and take, as opposed to, you know, them and us. And that's one of the things I really love about looking at reply emails.
Mm-hmm.
It just helps both the sales and the marketing department, and allows them to communicate better.
That's a really good point. And marketing and sales alignment is another one of those sayings that we kind of get tired of hearing, and so it loses its meaning. But it really is critical when you find a way that you can get marketing and sales on the same page, and they're both getting value out of a program. You know, it just leads to much better, you know, camaraderie and a much better efficiency of the whole organization and the revenue process. So Matt, I think I'm going to go ahead and have you, I'm going to switch presenters, and I'm going to ask you to show your screen so that we can see a little bit of the demo. Let's see if that's going to work. Yep, we can see your screen.
So, you know, one of the things that we talked about was the database decay. And, you know, I have a stat from Hart Hanks, says 70% of our data goes stale in some fashion. Zoom Info is somewhere around 60% from their report. So it's a real problem. And, you know, Emily and others see this. And Nancy, you talked about, gee, maybe it's a cell phone that's changed, or a phone, or somebody left the company. There's lots of reasons why this data goes stale. And so LeadGnome does help by providing new information, enhanced information about existing leads. So I'm just going to go into the account that we use here at LeadGnome for ourselves and take a look at some of the information. You can see that it's just a very simple view of the world. These are the folks that responded to an outgoing email from us, and you know, there's out of office emails, etc. Real quick, I'm going to pull in some more data by just opening this up into August. We can look for something like a left the company email. And so, you know, here's some folks that, you know, left the company. We'll look at, you know, just that piece of information and the response. In this case, this person retired, right? So the way they left was they retired. That's good context for folks. And then they provided some replacement folks to look at or to start to engage with. And so where we find that information in LeadGnome is over here in the Mind Contacts report, and we can look for replacement type records. And you know, here's one of them. Again, the response, we picked it up right here. So what's nice about this is we provide these kinds of records directly for Emily into her Marketo system. And you know, Diane is a replacement, and we know who she replaced by looking in the referring person column, so that we have connectivity between the different contact records, so that you know, Emily and others, whoever is the right person within the organization, QuickMobile, to take a look at this and do the right thing. We can write Marketo programs to automate triggering on these contact types, right? So that's
Matt,
sort of one.
Let me interrupt. I'm sorry, but just for a second, because I want to ask Emily, I know you use Marketo also, and so you tie these two systems together. Is this how you use it though? Do you go into these LeadGnome reports, or do you not even really have to do that because you just use your normal Marketo reporting?
At the very beginning I did, just because like during my trial, just to like triple check everything was working, but it always was working, and now I don't even have to log in. I just see the alerts. Yeah.
Yeah. So we tell our prospects and our customers, look, you're going to use our dashboard during the trial. And once you get used to it, another reason for the trial, right? You get used to the information. Then we're going to integrate with your system. And that's where all the information should be going. You don't want to learn another system, right? You want to use the systems you're used to, whether that's Marketo or Salesforce or HubSpot or, Oracle Cloud. Whatever the systems you're used to is really where you want the data, because that's where all your automation lives. And so that's why we pay a lot of attention to our integrations. And our customers like Emily, after the trial, they don't want to come back here. And they shouldn't, right? They really shouldn't. They just want the information where they can make most use of it.
Okay, so we talked about Marketo. You just mentioned Salesforce. So where does a salesperson, how do they get notified? For instance, Emily, when you had that, you spotted that somebody had left the company. Would a salesperson get that normally automatically?
Well, there's two places for us. I send an alert right from Marketo, which is just an email, but we update fields right in Salesforce. So when they go into their records and they're looking at a lead, they can see right away. We even use the plugins, because we use Marketo, it's called Interesting Moments, and it's right in there. It says everything they need to know about what's going on with that lead from LeadGnome.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and so what we create in Salesforce integrations, although Emily's team is using a different model, but if you were just to integrate with Salesforce, we will create a panel, a section. People in Salesforce are used to this, different sections for different apps. We'll have one for the LeadGnome information so that you can always get to it. And in Emily's case, there's an integration. It first goes into Marketo, if I understand correctly, and then flows appropriately the data that's necessary for sales teams to see into Salesforce.
So, Emily, how many of these do you get each, I don't know, week or month or however you quantify it? Like, is there 1,000 people that you're seeing that are, out of the office or leaving the company?
Yeah, yeah. I don't have my numbers on top, at the moment. I know that Matt looked them up earlier, but yeah, I would probably say like 1,000 a week or so, roughly. Yep.
Wow.
Emily's a good size organization. So Emily is probably a maybe a little over mid customer for us in terms of volume. I think her automation, though, is much more advanced than a lot, right? She is starting to experience or rather leverage more of the data than just the cleansing aspects, right? And we're going to continue to work with Emily to do some best practices on that. But we have customers that are running campaigns that are sending 4 million emails each month.
Wow.
And
wow.
We're literally mining tens of thousands of emails, replies for them every single month. 40, 50, 60,000 emails are coming back. And we're moving that directly into their system so that they can automate it. And, frankly, there's just no way to do that with a team of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk about database decay. I mean, that it doesn't take long for your database to be totally out of date. I want to ask you, because when a company is sending that many emails out and getting that many responses back, one of the responses is unsubscribes, right?
Right.
And talk a little bit about the compliance issues and what can happen if people, marketers or organizations, aren't catching when someone responds to an email rather than clicks on the unsubscribe button and says, hey, take me off your email list.
Yeah, do you want me to start, Emily, on that one? I'll take a swing at that first. But, especially the CASL, right, the Canadian legislation, it had been in place and there's a deadline of July 1st to get everything ramped up. But canned spam as well. If somebody replies, they don't hit that 2-point font at the bottom, link. If they hit reply and say, hey, please take me off your list or what have you, you're still responsible for that. And being a good canned spam or CASL citizen, you need to take heed of that and apply that. So generally speaking, we use HubSpot here at LeadGnome. Marketo has the same type of capability around a smart list. And so I don't know if my screen is still visible to folks, but there's a response type here, and we can find unsubscribes, okay? I don't think I have any here. I don't in this particular data set. But, you know, if there was an unsubscribe, we would find it there. And in Marketo, Emily, you're probably triggering off that response type that says, hey, unsubscribe, and you're probably adding it to a email list.
Absolutely. If we have that response type come through, it automatically unsubscribes and we don't have to worry about this. And just to clarify that, and this is all my companies I've ever been at, used to have to, after every single email, you have to go through all the out of offices just in case. And that was a huge manual process for the marketing department, every single send.
Yeah.
You know, in my view,
I'm sorry, one thing, I'm actually having customers come to us because of the July 1st deadline. I literally have customers coming to us saying, we need you to become compliant. It's too much work for us to do it, just as Emily mentioned, manually. And now that the law is in place with the teeth, right now they're starting to say, hey, look, you're not compliant, and that's fines. We're making sure we're doing that. It's a very interesting happening right now.
mm-hmm. And that was exactly what I was going to say, is I could see people getting LeadGnome just for that.
They are.
It's huge liability. I mean, it could cost a lot of money and people's jobs. Like Emily, I could imagine that you could almost, lose your job if you weren't, if you had somebody who was complaining because you didn't take them off their list and then they decided they were going to sue. That's a tough one to overcome.
Yeah. And you're personally held liable in these cases as well. So it's a big one.
I don't know, Nancy, if I ever told you this story, but it was about a year ago. We had a customer sign up, and one of the first things in their very first campaign that we caught for them, and I literally reached out to them. I called up my contact at the company and said, hey, I want to make sure that you saw this particular unsubscribe. And the unsubscribe was pretty irate. It was, I need you to take me off your list. This is the 5th time, and it's the last time I'm going to ask you. It listed by date the times that they had received and the times that they had responded, take me off your list, with the appropriate fine, the dollar value.
Gosh.
That's how far they went. And they said, as I mentioned, this is the last time. Please don't send me anymore. And what that company did was they called, because this is a brand issue, right? This is a brand protection issue.
Absolutely.
You want to treat your audience with respect. And you know what? Maybe that was the only person from that company that unsubscribed, but they really want to be unsubscribed. They personally called that person and said, listen, we're sorry. You're right. We weren't watching these appropriately, but we now have a system. You will not have this problem going forward. I've had that multiple times, but a year ago, that was probably the most severe one we've seen. We've seen others similar to it, but
mm-hmm.
It's important to people. You need to treat your audience with respect and take care of these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes me think about smaller companies. I mean, no one wants to suffer from this problem and pay the fines and all the legal, bills and all of that. But the smaller company you get, I mean, you literally can't afford it. I mean, you could actually go out of business. It could cause you to go out of business.
Right. And every lead is precious, right? So one of the interesting things is that spam filters are getting much more savvy, right? Emily, you've seen this with sender verifications. This is a kind of email that comes back automatically when you send into a company and they don't know you yet. This has repercussions if you don't comply with that response in a timely fashion on your email deliverability rate and your email reputation. So you can talk about big companies, but here's another great example for small companies too, where you have a smaller database and you want everything to get to your destination. And marketing automation systems will say it was delivered because the receiving server takes it in, but it actually can quarantine it, and it may not get delivered to the individuals. And when your open rate, because of that, starts to tail off, your email reputation starts to suffer. So it's kind of an interesting spiral. I have a very lengthy article on that on our blog, that might be useful for folks to take a look at. So, here's another great example of how something automated can capture these and provide very specific ways to work with these kinds of responses and do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So lots of reasons why you want to start paying attention to automatic, this is what you call it, right? Automatic email replies, which can include left the company, and often that happens for a while after somebody leaves. So it's an opportunity to quickly find out, one, that they left, and two, who replaced them. It can be unsubscribes. It can be, I'm just on vacation, which, by the way, don't you have something where if someone is out of the office, it will set up a to-do? This is really cool. Want to set up a to-do for a salesperson?
Yeah, so for CRMs, we're able to do that, right? Like Salesforce, we'll set up a task automatically. It's an option, but we'll set that up so that the connect rates go up, right? If you know that somebody's out, don't waste your time. The inside sales teams love this part, and we'll tell you when they're back, so you can start to call knowing that they're back in the office.
Mm-hmm. And the other part I want to reiterate, because we didn't talk about it a lot, is, and this gets back to database decay, which is, what this webinar is all about. And that is that signature line at the bottom of almost every email contains the most current information about that particular contact. Information that you might not have. It might be an empty field in Salesforce or in Marketo, that you don't know what their website is, or you don't know what their email or their specific title, or you don't know what the phone number is. And that data automatically populates into either the marketing automation or the CRM system and keeps the database fresh. And that's really what this is all about. We're out of time, but Emily, I want to give you maybe the last parting words about your experience or advice that you might give the audience.
Sure, I can do that. I think I'll just take this right out of my VP of sales. This is how he tells me every time we're talking about LeadGnome. He always, when I'm telling him, oh, it did this or created these leads, he just always says the power of the gnome. So that's how we say it around the office.
That's great.
That's awesome.
All right.
That is so cool.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks to both of you for participating in our webinar series. I'm sure folks got a lot out of it, and I'd like to thank everybody else that was on the call for their patience and for joining back in. And I hope that you can join us again on the next webinar. And we will be sending out the recording, so look for that, and go ahead and check out LeadGnome and get in touch with Matt and start your free trial. Okay, everyone. Thanks again.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.